Hello there, this is Ronnie. I would like to try and teach you something today about changing your diet, about maybe changing habits, but changing your diet, cutting out addictions, especially foods that you kind of can't stop eating. You have to understand yourself. This is a big part of this whole journey is understanding yourself, learning about yourself, learning about the human body, the human mind, and how that all works together. Understanding the nature of these kind of compulsions, addictions, compulsive behaviors. People sometimes feel out of control with their diet. They can't stop eating something and they're always eating in a certain way and they don't like it and they can't stop. And the nature of addiction, if you can't stop eating strawberries, nothing really wrong with that. If you were addicted to strawberries, that would be pretty good. Addiction is really where someone can't stop doing something and it's harmful to them. We can't stop breathing air. It's not an addiction. There's nothing harmful about breathing air. And if someone kind of can't stop exercising, well, as long as they're maybe not going overboard with it, maybe. But if you feel like I just love to run, I just can't stop running. That's not really an addiction because it's really a beneficial thing that you're doing, and you're enjoying the benefit of it. With addictions, it tends to be that there's a noticeably harmful element of it, and you can't stop despite that. So when you have things in your life like, oh, I really enjoy seeing my friend, whatever, and I can't stop wanting to go and see my friend or your partner or whatever, well, once again, it's not the same as an addiction because there's a good element there. If you've got a partner or a friend that hurts you all the time, but you can't stop seeing them, then you've maybe got like a bit of a problem there. So that's a good idea about an addiction. It's something that you can't stop doing that you actually are getting a negative side effect from. Of course, some people aren't aware of that yet and they're kind of in denial about their addictions causing problems for them. But anyway, there's a negative side effect to these things. Recently, I was eating a lot of tomatoes, and I don't think tomatoes or nightshades are, a lot of people will say nightshades aren't ideal or nightshades, and people talk about tomatoes being connected with arthritis and stuff. I don't really think so that much. I don't think they're playing a huge part in arthritis or anything, but there seems to be some people or some information to suggest that. I actually think that the worst tomatoes you can eat in terms of a toxic effect are the heirloom varieties and whatever you want to call these, the heirloom garden grown ones. See, some people will say, "Oh, I was getting all these amazing garden fresh, really nutritious, grown in the fantastic soil, you know, tomatoes," and then I was getting all these side effects, or then I was, and it's like, yeah, you're eating the most poisonous tomatoes that you get. If you're talking about tomatoes having some toxicity in them, that's not generally the ones in the supermarket. Like, oh, there is technically there is an alkaloid, a toxin in tomatoes, but there are toxins in all fruits and vegetables. So tomatoes do have, I think it's solanine. I think they might have nicotine in them, but nicotine outside of the uh, outside of the smoked substance is maybe not that bad. But um, so tomatoes, they do have toxins in them. So do all fruits. So it's not that big deal. Do they have more? Yeah, potentially they do. So people will say they're not optimal. They're not the best thing, and yeah, but a lot of people are talking about the theoretical raw vegan diet rather than the actual raw vegan diet that people are eating. So I was once traveling with a friend and they were saying to me, that's not optimal. I was eating tomatoes, that's not optimal. But that was, for me, what was keeping me raw, partly, was the fact that I and they didn't like the fact that I was having orange juice from a bottle and stuff like that. But those things kept me raw. Those are the things that kept me on my path, rather than at the end of the day being tired or wanting something else or not having enough calories or whatever. So sometimes you make these less than ideal choices for particular situations or scenarios, or if you're traveling or whatever. But I was eating tomatoes and I was enjoying it, and they were saying, "Oh, it's not optimal." Now, that person didn't stick to a raw diet. Hasn't ever stuck to a raw diet more than a month or a few months or whatever. And that's all good. I'm not criticizing anyone, but I know my vulnerabilities. That's you know. Anyway, I may have not made a video about that, but that was my little crutch at the time. That was my raw crutch. And to be honest, eating tomatoes, sometimes peppers, is a little bit like a crutch for me at times. And I don't mind it, but it's like I can't go a day without them. So I don't like that. And eventually, in my mind, I'm like, right, I want to get off of tomatoes. Maybe forever, maybe for a while, but I definitely want to get off them for a bit. And I've went months without them as well. And when I started off raw, I didn't eat tomatoes at all, basically. I didn't eat avocados either. I didn't eat avocados, didn't eat tomatoes. There's lots of things I didn't eat for like the first few years. So over the years, I developed a taste for tomatoes. And the funny thing is, there's something about tomatoes that it's not really the flavor. When you give them up for a while and you try them again, you're like, oh, there's not really any flavor to these. And then you have them another couple of times and the flavor kicks in. And it's not the flavor, it's like whatever is the stimulating element of tomatoes that gets you wrapped back into it again. The tomato addiction. So there's something in tomatoes that's different for sure. But I used to eat them and be like, there's no flavor. So I'd add dates and I would add lemon and I would add all this stuff to make a tomato sauce that was better tasting. And now I would just eat straight tomatoes and lettuce or whatever. That was the classic the Ronnie salad, I always called it, which was generally plum tomatoes and iceberg lettuce and eaten together in a particular way. That was the Ronnie salad, and that's what I ate all the time. And my ex girlfriend noticed that like I was so locked into eating it in a particular way and everything that I couldn't even do it differently. I was there was a bit it was a bit weird. Anyway, so I wanted to stop, but I know that I don't have the willpower, and no one really does, to go right. I'm not going to eat tomatoes from now on. It's not how it works. It's just not how it works. And what you really need to do, I would say, is you continue to think in your mind, I am going to give up tomatoes. That's what you continue to think. You continue to believe in that. You continue to go, I'm going to do that. I'm going to give up tomatoes. I'm going to give up tomatoes. Even when you're eating them, even when you're having them, you're saying to yourself, I'm going to give these up. And then maybe one morning you don't want to have them. So you go a morning without them. You go a afternoon without them. Then you might even have dinner without them. And then you go, oh, I don't think I'll have any tomatoes today. And then you end up having them. You end up going out and getting some. And that's happened to me with going raw. That's happened to me with every type of dietary change. You think you've given it up, and then you go and get it again. And you try a bunch of times, and you inevitably just fall off. The craving is just a bit too much, and it gets to you in the end, and it always gets to you in the end. But you've went a morning without them, or a morning and an afternoon, or the whole not close to the whole day, half a day. You're playing around with it. You're pushing away at it, and you're still thinking, I'm gonna give these up. I'm gonna give these up. But what you're not doing is saying, I'm doing this tomorrow. I'm doing this right now. You don't put any kind of time parameter on it, really. You say, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. And you keep that focus on it. Even when you're eating them, you keep that focus on it. This is where I'm going. I'm eating these right now, but this is where I'm going. And one day, without you even thinking about it, you will wake up and go, don't really feel like having tomatoes today. One day. And you get to the end of the day and you're like, yeah, I'm okay. I don't think I'll have them today. You end up going that one day without them, and it's almost effortless. And that's been my experience with going raw and with everything. It's like it never happens right overnight. You can just force yourself to do it. That could happen if you were away somewhere in a place where the food was all controlled and you couldn't eat anything else and all that. You could do it there. But on your own, in your own environment, around your own habits, it's really tough. Really tough to make that change. So I just think about this thing of continuing to believe that you're going to change. That's where you're going. You know you're going to do it, and then not forcing it too much. When people are forcing it and think they can control themselves and think they can force themselves, and they're in control and they're disciplined, this is really bad. I think it's really, really bad. This also isn't an excuse for people doing the other thing, which is like never making that change. If you know you need to give something up, it's time to start working on it. But what you don't do is say, right, that's me doing it right now. Because what happens is there's the boomerang effect of the person going, okay, I'm cutting that out. Often people tell all their friends, go online, talk about it, and then a couple of days later or a week later, they go back to eating the stuff. And then they feel really bad about it. They feel doubly bad about it because they had this expectation that they were going to cut it all out and give it all up. And actually, what happened is the addiction was playing around with you. That's kind of what happens. It plays around with you and says, yeah, you're strong enough. You can give me up. I'm just a weak addiction here. I'm not powerful. I don't have any power over you. Just give me up. It's playing with you. It knows it's coming back in a week later. It's going to find you at your most vulnerable moment. Oh, they've got a little vulnerable moment. I think I'm just going to rear right in 100% right now, out of the blue. Or you're going to have a week where where you've given it up perfectly, your diet's perfect, and it just comes in and says, hey, you're not addicted to me anymore. You can go a week without me easy. Why don't you just try and have me again and see what it's like? Just try. Just one time, no big deal. And then they weasel their way back in. They weasel their way back in. Um, Other times it's just like, this whole healthy lifestyle thing. What's the point? There's no point to it. Just eat anything you want. Just no point to this. Just your motivation, your enthusiasm's just gone all of a sudden. It's all meaningless and you can't even understand why you're doing it. And then you're right to go back to that addiction. There's so many different little points. One might be, oh, but don't you remember that time with your friends and your family and you were eating your addiction thing and it was all great and you can never have that again and it's amazing and it's brilliant and all these different things come in, emotional, mental, psychological stuff comes in. The actual craving can be painful. It's a painful, uncomfortable feeling. It's like, I know I can get rid of this if I just have the thing. Oh. So sometimes you just give in to your addiction, but you consciously know, I'm going in this direction. Keep on constantly focused on it. Don't give up on it completely. Definitely don't go, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm never going to do this. No, you are going to do it. You are going to do it. It'll just take some time. Just keep on pushing at it. Keep on pushing at it. It'll start trying to play with you. It'll start to figure you out. It'll start to push you. Just keep going. Keep going. I want to be a perfect fruitarian, and that's where I'm going towards. But just because I want that doesn't mean I can do that right now. You need to go through that process of change. That's why coaching is a good thing for people. That's why courses or education is a good thing. But really, the coaching is about helping people get through that process. All the different thoughts that come up, the different worries, the different concerns. the emotional side of it and all that kind of stuff. So keep a belief. You're gonna do it. Don't don't give up on it. Don't think I can't do this. Right, I'm just going to forget about that. You're allowing the addiction to win. And you have to say to it, you're winning the battle, you're not winning the war. I'm winning this war. See, people just lose the battle and they give up on the war. You have to believe I'm winning the war. You might win 10 battles over a course of a year. You might win 10 battles, but I'm going to win the war. The next 40 years, I'm going to be free of my, cooked food addiction, whatever it is. So this thing with the tomatoes reminded me that's what it's like. That's what it's like. Now, am I going to give up tomatoes forever? I don't know, actually. I can't. Someone said to me once they couldn't be raw if they couldn't eat tomatoes. They are a big thing for people. It's that salty flavor, even though they don't have a lot of sodium, so it's not really salty flavor, but it's something else in them. But they don't have a lot of sodium, but it is a savory flavor for people. It's a savory flavor. Is I've got some friends that we talk about tomatoes. We have jokes about tomatoes. Like, I know people that have told me that they can tell their performance goes down if they eat more tomatoes and stuff like that. They can tell there's something about them, but we still love them. We love the flavors, and you don't really get a lot of other fruits that have those kind of flavors in the conventional fruit that's around. So tomatoes are pretty special. When you're getting those heirloom tomatoes, when you can, I've just got memories of being in parts of Canada or the US, driving around, maybe stopping at farmers markets and stuff like that, and getting these, and the farmers market in Union Square in New York, in Manhattan, just unbelievable, unbelievable tomatoes. And a story just popped to mind. I probably shouldn't tell it, but uh, there was some really like wealthy raw vegan girls trying to get free tomatoes at the end of the day. I was like, oh my god, go and pay for them. You, I don't never mind. So, um, but I remember days, hours, or whatever days in Union Square Farmers Market, getting loads of these tomatoes and just binging, and it doesn't feel good. It's not, but the flavors, like the colors, like every color, and amazing, and those big crunchy calcium parts. I mean, that's amazing. It's just those are the best parts. Uh, so tomatoes in the raw vegan culture, like tomatoes are can be like this amazing thing, but it's kind of an addiction thing. It's kind of an addiction thing. Don Bennett says it caused his arthritis, or he got some arthritis symptoms. I don't know if he ever got checked out for actually having arthritis. Was it an allergic reaction? Was it really arthritis? I'm getting the feeling that if he was getting tomatoes, it was probably these heirloom, super high toxin organic, which means super high toxin, which is what a lot of our organic varieties are. Super high in toxins, so that pests don't eat them, but humans eat them, and which is another thing about organic that people don't understand, but it doesn't matter. Uh, but he says no tomato, stay away from tomatoes. I think that's not a great idea. I think you need to enjoy and experiment with this lifestyle. I think if you're in the raw vegan world of food, as long as you're not going too high fat, you're pretty fine for most of it. And you might have your own allergies to certain things, but you shouldn't be too concerned. You shouldn't be too worried. And with tomatoes, it shouldn't be too much of a worry. But for me, cutting it out for a while, I've been off them 4 or 5 days. Um, and the funny thing is, sometimes I've given up tomatoes for a while. When I ate tomatoes again, I felt a feeling like, and I can only explain this like my arteries expanding, right? So it was like my flushing of blood. I felt like my I could feel the flushing of blood, like blood coming to the surface, if that makes sense in your body. And that's not right. You shouldn't have that reaction from eating food. Like that's your body going, whoa, toxins or something. Like your body is having a reaction to the food you're eating as strong as that. That's not quite right, you know. So yeah, there's something in tomatoes that's not perfect, but with it's not a bad thing. But my main point in this video, giving up addictions, giving up things, starting new habits. You're not going to do these things immediately. You're not going to force yourself to do it. You're not going to have the willpower to do it. You've got to accept you're not in control. You've got to just keep going with it. Keep going with it. And one day it'll all fall into place, and all of a sudden you'll get into a rhythm and a habit of it. But don't try and force it. Be humble. Stay humble about this. You can't just you've been eating that food your entire life, and you think you're going to change it all right now. Like, take some time, work on it, move forward, continue to educate yourself, stay focused on it, stay interested. Imagine your future, what you want to be, who you want to be, how you're going to feel. Keep on pushing on that. Maybe some affirmations. I'm so happy and grateful now that I live an addiction-free life, or whatever you want to say. And just keep on pushing on in the right direction. Just keep pushing at it, and you'll eventually get there, and it'll just fall into place. But you have to keep going. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in another video. Put your questions below, and thank you.